What's the connection between racism in football in 1909 and now? The boys at Henry Compton School in West London are watching a recent incident in a European football match to get to grips with continuity and change in history.
OK, Java, tell us first of all what you could hear from the crowd.
When Ashley Cole got the ball, the Spanish fans were booing him because he was black and they were making noise like monkeys.
What is that clip telling us, Daniel?
Well, I feel from that clip is that that the Spanish people that were in the stadium are racist.
Okay.
I feel that they're trying to tell you that, you know how long ago they used to be racist, it's still going on now.
Excellent point, excellent point. What's the connection between Walter Tull and this, do you think?
He was one of the first black footballers. He must have got quite a lot of abuse from other people watching the matches that he was playing in.
Dan Linden and his class are exploring the World War I period through the eyes of a significant figure, Walter Tull.
Walter Tull's story, he was considered dim because of his colour.
If he was one of the first black people to play football and he was one of the best players and he was sort of like a role model for the other white men.
He played for Clapton, Tottenham and Northampton.
The World War got underway and he joined the army. He became one of the first black men to ever be in charge of white soldiers.
If it wasn't for him, we wouldn't have other ethnicities leading people in the army. So, and probably it will still be quite racist in the army. So he was a great breakthrough in history.
Walter Tull was an officer, a footballer and a black Briton. The class are in the middle of a depth study, and in this lesson they'll analyse original source materials to understand racism in football then and now. The event in Walter's life they're focusing on is known as the Bristol Scandal.
What we're going to look at today is possibly the first ever recorded example of racist abuse at an English football match. Okay? And this is when Walter Tull was playing for Tottenham against Bristol City. And some very dodgy accents.
A section of the spectators made a cowardly attack upon him in language lower than Billingsgate. Let me tell these Bristol hooligans, there were but few of them in a crowd of nearly 20,000, that Tull is so clean in mind and method as to be a model for all white men who play football, whether they be amateur or professional. In point of ability, if not in actual achievement, Tull was the best forward on the field.
The journalist describes it as language lower than Billingsgate. For me, it was very, very important to teach about Walter Tull for a couple of reasons. First of all, because it fits in with my passion or my kind of mission, I suppose, which is to try and increase the amount of black and Asian British history that's taught in schools. But secondly, the story of Walter Tull is such a universal story that I think it's really important. When the journalist was writing the report, what was his comment about Walter Tull during that game?
He didn't understand why people were saying racist comments to him because he was one of the best players on the field.
Okay.
And he said that he's an example to all professional and amateur footballers, whether they be white or black.
Great.
Okay. We're all human, we're all equal, so yeah, it's really upsetting to see something like this happen, especially to a talented footballer.
Can anyone tell me why they think this abuse might have taken place in Bristol, of all places?
Was Bristol part of the slave trade?
And even though this is 100 years after slavery had been abolished, do you think they would still have an impact in that town?
Yeah, I still think that they would treat black people with a lot less respect.
And because of that connection with slavery. Hugely important for them to bring in their prior knowledge. And sometimes students find it very difficult to kind of bring in their wider knowledge because in many ways they see history as boxed up in different periods which there's no overlap or no kind of change or continuity, and so you have to kind of draw that out of them.
In a time when the vast majority of footballers and football fans were white, the presence of black players on the pitch would have been noteworthy. The class's next task is to use historical sources to develop a post-match report for the Bristol-Tottenham game of 1909.
I'll be the reporter
No, I'll be the host who asks you, and then you say a bit, and then I question you about it, and you just say some quotes from here.
Walt Tull was playing against Bristol, and even though Walt Tull is like one of the better players on the team, he was still getting a lot of racist chants, and it was like that then. That's how people felt.
This source here talks about Tull having such perfect coolness, such careful waiting for a fraction of a second in order to get the pass in before the defender has worked to a false position. Okay? Accuracy of strength in passing, Tull is very good. So you can use some of that kind of evidence as well. Okay? And we've got the pictures as well. You know, it's fundamentally important that history students are studying historical sources, because that's the real history that they need to learn from, and that's the skill that they have to be working with. So being able to have access to documents or photos or newspaper reports just means that there's many different ways that the pupils can engage and access that material.
It's strange that even though he is such a good footballer, people are bringing him down because he's race. And the fact that he is black, he's still quite an amazing footballer and should be idoled by other footballers, professional and amateur.
Like I said, the commentator, he even said that he was one of the best players and he was sort of like a role model for the other white men, and he still got pushed to the sidelines. If there weren't people like him who started playing football doing that, there probably wouldn't be as many black people doing that now or able to.
It's actually quite strange that the Bristol reporter is defending Tull, and even for the Bristol journalist to defend him like that against his own Bristol public shows just how good he thinks he is.
He was someone we have loads of records for. Some sources may not be exactly reliable, some may be biased, or some may have other ideas, but using like two sources, you can clear each of them up, balance them out basically, find out what was really going on, kind of thing.
Probably the most useful out of all of them would be this piece of quote there from the Bristol newspaper, because the fact that he's writing for the Bristol public and that he's criticising them, saying that they were disrespectful and the hooligans for Tull is quite amazing, because he's risking being penalised by the public just to get his point through. And yeah, like I said, little bits of information from there and showing how strong he is compared to others from the images.
Part of the skill in creating an effective response or an effective answer is to be aware of what the most appropriate material to select is, and that's actually quite a challenging skill for students.
In all my years of commentary, I've never seen racist abuse as bad as this. Like a top-class match with and there was some bad racist chants going on between the match, and they're equal, with all people they're equal, so I don't know why there's any reason they should be racist to them.
He was actually quite a brilliant person, and if he was live nowadays would be getting, I don't know, he'd be making in the thousands a week.
Right. I'm surprised that slavery was still going after it was abolished, and as I'm not a white guy myself, so I'm sympathetic towards Walter Tull. If I'm a footballer, I might be booed as well, because I'm not exactly white.
The pupils can connect a lot more with individuals. You know, sometimes if you're talking about big issues, big topics, the big picture, they find it quite hard. It's a bit esoteric or it's a bit ethereal.
Many games of the era drew crowds in the tens of thousands, and the back pages of papers were crammed with sports reports. The class gets the chance to feed back on their commentaries.
Right, that was just the match for today, Bristol versus Tottenham. Quite an amazing game, don't you agree?
Quite amazing, in fact. 0-0, but for this incident, about mid-game in front of 2,000 people here.
Yes, I think the Bristol supporters got a bit out of hand today. Total racist abuse of language towards Walter Tull. I really cannot see a reason for this.
Well, there could be a reason for this, as Bristol was where the ships undoubtedly went off for the slave trade.
Well, in the end, I feel appalled by fellow supporters, and I see Walter Tull has been scarred by this racism today.
Thank you very much. Round of applause, please. I know that was very, very nice. Very good, thank you very much. Any feedback on the first one?
I think they're talking about too much information, and they didn't actually tell you what it was really about, but they just kept on doing details.
The story got lost a little bit because there was a little bit too much extra information going on. It's very important for a historian to be able to tell a good story. That story has to be based on fact. And so we have to use the sources well, and we have to use them honestly, and we can't exaggerate.
Oh. This is King Khan Slav reporting from Bristol Stadium. Breaking news. This is the worst game of my life. The amount of racism, and it can't get any worse. Monkey noise at Toll, it was despicable. A fiasco, a quagmire of epic proportions. It was a rocky game for most of us, but mainly water. This is the last straw, Slav, the last straw.
Hey, thank you very much. A round of applause for that one. Okay, who wants to give some feedback on that?
I think the commentary was actually quite good, but he over-exaggerated certain words, like saying that he is King Kakar, and that it's a quagmire of epic proportions.
Okay, so in some ways the language was a little bit too over the top.
Yeah.
Okay.
He needed more historical evidence, because most of it, was saying it was racist and using all these words, but he didn't relate it all back to the sources or anything.
The danger is that students go off on a kind of history fantasy and bring in elements which are not historically accurate. And you do have to be careful to make sure that they don't take the license too far to go off into this kind of realm of fantasy.
That was a beautiful top-class match there between Tottenham and Bristol City. Probably the best match I've seen in ages, although I do disagree with the racist chants throughout the game. These chants were directed towards, I reckon, man of the match, Walter Tull. In all my years of commentary, I've never seen racist abuse as bad as this. You know, if I was in Walter Tull's shoes, I would feel like no one likes me, like I'm some dirt on someone's shoes. On the whole, it was a great match, but not for Walter Tull. I felt really sorry for him, and I hope he doesn't experience these brutal chants ever again.
I felt Zaxxon really got into the game, and really described how the abuse of Walter Tull, how he felt about the abuse of Walter Tull, and how Walter Tull must have felt about it. And he really got into how, in detail, the feelings he must have gone through.
Very nice feedback there from Farhad. History has been written until recently by the winners, by the victors, and often that has been white, male, middle-class historians. And there's only a few of us radicals out there who are determined to kind of change things.
It's trying to make us think, really, about how things have changed a massive amount, but still there are things that don't change, and things that can still be used to hurt, and things that basically need to be acknowledged.
To see how this depth study develops students' historical skills, watch Walter Tull, The Pupil's Perspective.